All right,
That was
good morning, good afternoon. Yes, recording has started. So let's go ahead and get started here. So thank you again for joining the weekly PWA community meeting. We've got yet another action-packed agenda here, featuring none other than Stan with some of the great work that he's done recently, bringing together Gatsby and Studio. And so he's going to give us a demo of that that I think is long awaited and folks have started to play around with internally, also externally. And so we're pretty excited to see that ourselves. Then we're going to switch gears, though. So Nishant is going to walk us through some of the mapping he's been doing. So he is product manager here, responsible for GraphQL. And so as we start to think about some of the new work that can be opened up with 231 and kind of what's to come afterwards, he's uniquely positioned in between the various teams here, which really becomes, again, an enabler for what we're doing around PWA, Venya, the UI components, et cetera, for that. So he's going to walk us through some mapping there that I think in some ways is a bit long. What we're doing is really going to be a fresh take on kind of what uses what from a Venya standpoint and kind of what to expect next. And then upward. So James has been actively involved in answering some of the questions online, and so we've done some work there to help simplify some of the messaging and the description of what that is and what that isn't necessarily. And so we'll be available for some questions and maybe an update from James on that. And last but not least, the help wanted section. And so one of the things that we're really proud of is the community support on this. And so with some of the enablers that Nishant will talk about, some of the exciting extension work that Stan will walk us through, and really some of the work that's already in progress on the board, we're at a unique opportunity to pick up some additional community contribution from this. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the things we've got, at least currently, similar to what we used to do with grooming, but also, again, make ourselves available for any suggestions along the way. So that's the agenda. Should we choose to accept it in the next 30 minutes or so? But, we do have a lot to cover, but I really would love to start off with Stan here. Give us a quick introduction, and again, love to see what you got.
Yeah. Okay, can I share my screen? Okay. So I prepared some basic diagram of how things are built currently. So I've developed a Gatsby source plugin, which gets all the data from the Magento GraphQL endpoint and creates all the nodes for the Gatsby to build the pages. So when the build runs, my plugin downloads all the products, categories, and all other data necessary to build pages. And all this data is available to the plugins through unified GraphQL interface to the React.js components. And as a result, static HTML and images are produced. And that's what you got from this. So this is step one. Yeah. Then comes step two, which is running all this in the browser. So I've just used PWA Studio data layer for now, which was Redux. And I've plugged it in into Apollo GraphQL and wrapped it with queries and mutations, so it will be easier to upgrade PWA Studio without breaking anything else. Also, since all the product images and categories are generated actually by Gatsby, and it creates a few different versions for different resolutions, so I had to take over the step of generating product and category images, URLs, and so that's what my GraphQL layer does. So this part is actually the same as with any PWA PWA Studio build. I've just added this one, so yeah, it's just like a lightweight layer above it. But I actually had to develop some middleware code to plug it into this build pipeline. So let me demo it just quickly. So I have here. Yeah, I also wanted to show you that this is actually the store with old demo data, the one you used with Luma, etc. And the development, to start the development server, it takes like 20 seconds when the cache is warm. So when the old images are generated, etc. And after that, you can just change any component source code and it will reload it instantly. So this is okay. I have this running on local for now because I've just published the code to the repository yesterday. So there are some issues which I need to fix. But overall, it kind of works. I already implemented product options, selections, so you can add them to the cart. I also had to, not actually had, but I decided to use different framework for generating style sheets. So I'm using File.js instead of external style sheets which you use in PWA Studio. So I ported a few components from PWA Studio and others I written myself. Also, I kind of implemented support for CMS blocks, but I had to develop custom extension for Magento since the data I needed wasn't actually there yet on 2.3.
Yep.
So yeah.
This looks really great. I mean, for anybody who's seen this so far, I think they're really impressed with the speed in which this operates. At first glance, I mean, even without looking at Lighthouse and things like that, it's really impressive how fast this is and how you've applied pretty faithfully some of the app shell and navigational considerations from Studio Beyond, obviously the technical ones as well. And so I know we've said it said it open and others, but like this is really impressive. So we were just so excited to have you here and have you walk through it. But just really nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah, this looks awesome.
Very much agreed. I have a couple of questions about the way that you would address administrative use cases, like making modifications to the.
Oh, we lost you, James.
James?
Oh, I may have definitely lost you. Hold on, let me.
Okay.
I think I can predict what he was going to ask. I think he was curious. He was curious about like cache invalidation. So like, we'll let him confirm when he comes back. But like, if you change something in the admin UI, how does that trigger kind of like redeployment of your assets in Gatsby?
Yeah, each node which is created in Gatsby gets its own hash generated, and you can actually choose based on which you can generate that hash. So you can just use last modification date, and when you modify the product in the admin, next time Gatsby fetches all the product data, it detects that the hash has changed and it regenerates that page and images or whatever you need. Also, there are connections between different nodes, so you can. I already added some connections, so like CMS blocks have connections to products and categories have connections to products, but you can add whichever connections you need, so you can easily introduce some other nodes. If you have some custom extension, you just create new nodes and you can link it to products and any other entities. For linking, it uses internal Gatsby IDs, so it's just a list of strings, an array of strings, so it's not memory intensive. Yeah.
This looks awesome. It is mind-blowing.
Hi, yeah. I'm back. Apparently Blue Jeans was not interested in my questions, but you're absolutely right. I'd love to look at the connections that you designed, or the connections that you specified between products and CMS pages.
One sec. So right now the code is quite simple.
Sure.
So here I'm like parsing the definition of the product list widget.
Okay. So this is bound to string representations of internal Magento classes. Or, I mean, they're public API classes, but they're PHP classes.
Yeah, because I don't have anything better at the moment. So I just have custom implementation for handling different widgets.
Okay.
At the moment, I just have text and product list, but I can add more.
Yeah, this could become extensible or based on a manifest, yeah.
Yeah. So this block just adds like products matched by attribute and value. I have just a hash map of this, but we can actually run a GraphQL query to the Magento backend to fetch matching products. So, but for now it's fine like this.
Very, very, very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. This code is also open source, but I just didn't link everything, so I'll do it later.
Yeah, we saw that actually. It's thank you so much for publishing that. I think a lot of folks will start taking a look at that. So, what are you calling it again? Like Neo Storefront, or what was it?
Yeah, yeah. Like in the movie, he had choice between one reality and another one, and dynamic storefronts is what we have now, and static ones pre-generated is kind of different thing.
Yeah.
The opposite. So yeah.
That's cool. Very, very cool. Any other questions? I thought I saw a couple other folks trying to chime in. Any other questions for Stan on this one?
Yeah, I was going to ask. You said that you were using a different system for styling. What did you say you'd switched away from CSS modules into what?
PWA. It's not very popular, but I just like it, and it's very.
But it's a CSS fast. And JS thing where you pass down.
Yeah.
Styles through JS.
It allows some dynamic styling based on properties, so you can create a dynamic style and mutate it based on some values.
Can you
Okay.
say its
Yeah.
name again or spell it?
Well, FELA.js.
Okay, taking a look. Is it named after Fela Kuti?
I don't know.
It's some other fella.
It seems
Yeah.
jolly good to me.
I do
One of
have
the
a
challenges that we had with doing this, doing Venue was that CSS and JS is pretty popular, but the whole market is pretty fragmented, right? There's a lot of different CSS and JS options, and everybody seems to have their favorite. So it's cool that you can still do, the one that you like, even though we went with a different solution.
Yeah, it wasn't hard. I mean, porting your components doesn't take much time. So I leave logic almost the same, but I just change styling.
Cool.
Super cool.
It's great.
So was this the project that was able to integrate page builder content into the app as well?
No, I don't have page builder, but if you'll send
Okay.
it to me, I will.
Nice one. Okay, sorry. Yeah, there's a few projects rolling around. Somebody has integrated page builder into it. Maybe we'll get them on next week to demo that.
Yep. Yeah, I can help you with that one on Tommy. And then Stan, we might be able to get you access to a commerce dev environment too, if you want to play around with that. So that's certainly the least we can do for all your work here. But yeah, I think Jimmy's right. Everything, like, this is exactly the type of extension and extensibility we love to see, right? The community is really showing some interesting twists and turns on what we're doing, and it's good to know that the components can be reused and building upon what we're doing here. And so I think we were just, again, and I've seen comments from Ben Martz and Philip Jackson, I think this morning, and others. I think this is getting the attention it deserves, because ultimately this is what we want to see for this, because a team of our size can't build everything, and so we'd love to see things picked up and seeing what you're doing here, even with something like Gatsby, which is giving you that performance and some of those other capabilities that inherently has. So good stuff.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Of course.
Cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and switch gears to Stan. Thanks again for joining us this morning. I know it's a little bit later in your side of the world here, but I think we're going to switch gears here and have Nishant walk us through what appears to be fairly timely is the GraphQL work and how that's mapped with Venue. So,
all right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take it as yes.
Yep.
All right, so before I go through the mapping, I just want to caveat by saying this is work in progress. I have recently started doing it, maybe a couple days back. So there may be a lot of things missing, but the idea is to do inventory everything that we currently have in GraphQL and map it to where it's used. So I've looked at both Venya as well as Luma. Luma doesn't really use any GraphQL, it's all REST. So let's go through and hopefully it makes sense. So what I've done is I've looked at the entire shopping cycle from a customer standpoint and divided the coverage by page. So we'll go page by page, starting with home page. And you have a table here with a few columns. The first one is feature that's available on the page. Component is basically the page itself. Whether that feature is supported by REST, which will most likely be yes for all the cases, where we are on GraphQL for that, and what is Venya using for that feature, and what is Luma using. So Venya, if you look at the home page, we have, I think, pretty good coverage on GraphQL for homepage, and looks like Venya is pretty much using everything except hot sellers. However, I just saw that, Stan, in your demo, you had hot sellers on the home page. I'm not sure what you're leveraging or how you're getting that in your app. Can you tell us? I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I've just created parser for those CMS blocks. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
It's not through GraphQL.
Okay.
It was much easier like that. And for now,
Yeah.
I have mapped different blocks to different pages because, like a workaround also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine that's probably how Adrian and the Intune team and some of the other examples we've seen.
Yeah.
The CMS block has been a bit of a. There's a couple different ways to do that, and so
we do have GraphQL support for CMS blocks and pages both, and I think if you want to switch to that, I think that would be helpful. So moving on to the next page, category. I think again on this page we have pretty good GraphQL coverage, and from Vania standpoint, I think pretty much everything is covered except swatch color and image data that's currently not being used. It's not supported by GraphQL, and seems like Vania is not leveraging that even through REST, or maybe. All right, moving on to the product page. So here, I think the biggest gap I see is MSI support that's currently missing from GraphQL. So if you are using MSI, the inventory data may be coming in incorrect through GraphQL. So that is something that we have on the backlog. We are currently going through the prioritization process, and we will start working on it pretty soon and have it available. So one thing that I missed in the beginning, that all this coverage is based on 2.3 dev branch. So if you are looking, please look in the dev branch, and 2.3.1 will be a subset of these.
Right.
Card page, again, pretty much everything is available except card totals. That is something that's in progress. But from a Vania standpoint, I don't think it's integrated with the current branch, 2.3 dev branch of GraphQL. So I think that's an opportunity where we can start plugging into GraphQL with additional operations. And then checkout. Again, checkout here, a couple of gaps, place order. We do have a community ticket open, and we may have a pull request already submitted for place order, but we haven't reviewed that PR, and we don't know. So I've listed it as a gap, which again, we have it on the backlog, and we'll address it as soon as possible. And then last is my account. I think this is probably the biggest hole we have in terms of GraphQL coverage. So my goal is to inventory everything, make sure it's accurate, and then go through the prioritization process and create tickets. And ideally, we would be dividing and conquering, open it up for community and get help where we can, and try to see if we can get any resources internally to expedite this as well. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, please put it on the community channel. I'm happy to help answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Nishant. Any questions from folks here on the phone? We're still thinking.
No questions, just comments. This putting this all together is super helpful. Helpful.
Yeah, very much so. Thanks.
You're welcome. Hopefully,
the detail.
Yeah, this helps, and my goal is to. I mean, this will be a living document because we will be adding more functionality, and so I'll make sure this is up to date. And if there's a place, if you have a community space where we can share this, let me know. I'm happy to put this content there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep, we can talk about that. Yeah, I think we'll probably want this somewhere in between the GraphQL and the PWA Studio repos.
Okay.
We can have shared shared concept between there. So no, this is great stuff. Yeah, I think we've had a really good understanding where this is. That really kind of seeing this piece together at a customer experience level really gives us an understanding what's there, and if you happen to need it right now, what you would have to what we would have to do that based on, again, for those who are just joining that premise where we have taken taken really more a REST GraphQL hybrid model on things that weren't there, where we pretty much decided that just having a product details page and a category page for Longflasher wasn't compelling enough. And so we've got this hybrid model that will continue to drive throughout the year, not only in terms of coverage, but Nishant's working really heavily with the team on things like performance and others that, just like any other GraphQL project, needs the right attention and really needs to be a big part of what we do, because ultimately from a PWA standpoint, that gives us the performance and gives us the gives us the page level experiences that we need. So good stuff. Cool. All right.
Nice meeting you all.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So onward and upward into the agenda. James, any updates from your standpoint? I know you've been active with the community online. Anything you want to share in terms of upward as a whole, kind of next steps that would be worthwhile here?
Well, I don't have a lot to show, but that's because I want the feedback to go in the other direction this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you want. It has come to our attention that a lot of people are confused or concerned about the presence of Upward in our stack, or the existence of Upward, the justification behind it. The folks who are on this call, you guys probably have done the most work, put in the most effort to understand it, to use the PWA Studio setup that utilizes it so that you have the most context. But there are those out there who are trying to introduce themselves to this and are trying to read the specification document that we've produced or some of the introductory docs that we've made, and they're having some trouble. And we knew that the documentation story for Upward was incomplete. We have a lot more to add to Upward to make its value proposition more clear. But we'd like to start with getting an impression from the most committed stakeholders in our community about what Upward is. And I wanted to play a little game with you, which is volunteer only. There's 12 participants on this call, and I think of them, we've got Stan, Jordan, Artyom, and the rest of those folks are Magento today. But anyone who wants to, and I'm especially interested in those three folks, I'd love to hear if you can summarize what Upward is in a sentence to you. We can start with Stan, who has not used Upward in his Gatsby work, so he may actually have an opinion on it. So I'm wondering, Stan, if not to put you on the spot, you don't have to do this, but if you could tell back to me what your impression is of Upward and what you believe it does.
I believe it serves like a middle, some middle service between Magento and front end, which you are going to instrument with different capabilities in the future for like transforming some data or assets or whatever you need. And
okay.
Right now, I believe it just serves images and proxifies requests to different endpoints or something like that. Sorry, I didn't dig deep enough.
No, that's mostly correct. I think the missing pieces are that it evaluates templates and it can perform GraphQL queries on the server side to assemble context. It is a new system and it is a new thing to learn. It's not a large domain-specific language, but it is one. Do you understand why we created this instead of just creating, say, a Node.js server or middleware to serve PWA Studio?
Yeah, it will be easier to extend, and you can standardize deployments and I don't know, all those things which comes with them.
I am pleasantly surprised at how well and completely you answered this. Thank you. Um, uh, so Jordan or Artyom, if you can pretend you didn't hear what Stan said, I'd love to hear what your definition or impression of Upward is.
Sure. If you guys can hear me.
We can.
Yes.
Okay. So to be honest, I haven't really looked into it yet. I was mostly, of course, focusing on just creating components. But for me right now, it seems to be like some sort of specification, or maybe more of an implementation, or on how you need to send data to the server, and it feels like some sort of middleware, but it's not tangible for me right now. Like, I'm not sure if it's some sort of server running somewhere, or if it's just a guideline that your code needs to follow. So I'm pretty much in the blue, but I haven't read the specifications yet. So.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate that. Artyom, do you feel like giving me your impression or the story of how you, what your impression was of it at first, how you've come to understand it?
Yep. I will try to use normal people words instead of technical stuff. I would say, what are we doing here? It's a future. And from this side, to using normal words, Magento backend, I would say, will store and save and manage data from the backend. Let's call it from admin side. And PWA Studio, and including all other tools, it's a service how to show it. So in the future, we can set a lot of different services how to show it and connect to, let's say, one or a lot of different databases where data actually exist.
Okay. So it's a place where you could connect to more than just Magento. Okay, thank you.
Since we are on Magento call, no, connect only with Magento.
Yeah, well, true. So far. And by more than just Magento, of course, I am excluding competitors. Just, different stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you. The common element that I'm hearing from everyone who has given their impression is that we have missed a fundamental part of the Upward story. And I want to try to say it in a sentence and then ask you if it helps to clarify what we were trying to do. Upward is for front-end developers to quickly adjust and configure the server side that delivers their front-end web app. With Upward, you don't have to edit server-side code so that front-end side code can use data and static files. You can put all of the server-side behavior you need in your PWA client-side project as an Upward file. Does that help?
It makes a bit more sense, but is it then a more of an interface on how we connect to the Magento backend, or?
Yeah, I think you can think of the Upward file as like a Docker file and an Upward server as like Docker itself. An Upward server, like we have made for JavaScript and PHP, it is a generic server. It doesn't know about PWAs. It doesn't know about Venia. All it knows is how to parse Upward files and then serve those things. So the interface is between your Upward configuration and that generic server. A PWA with an Upward file can run on any server which can interpret Upward files without having to design custom routes, without having to do server-side rendering on Ruby or PHP or Node. It makes the PWA portable across platforms, and a front-end developer should be able to maintain it.
I have a question, James.
Yeah?
So if as a front-end developer, I kind of understand, I'm getting to understand the concept of Upwork, but if as a front-end developer I have a application and I got as far as building an Express server with my routes or my server-side rendering and all that already, is there a value for me to extend Upwork into my Express server, or it becomes redundant? Or is Upwork a replacement of that Express server?
Upward is a replacement of that Express server.
Okay.
You have the privilege as a front-end developer using modern systems with modern skill sets that you have developed of being able to cheaply and easily create an Express server. And then you can deploy it anywhere you want to.
Okay.
We have cloud systems that we try to sell, and we have a huge base of Magento 1 installations, solution partners that create a lot of value knowing that what they know, the PHP stack, the Magento system. If you were one of those folks, and you'd look at PWA Studio, and maybe you'd see, first off, you have to have this Express server, and if you want some custom functionality, you just have to go add routes to this Express server. I think that's a high bar to clear, because that says not only do you need to remember the PHP because you're still maintaining an instance of Magento, but now you have to learn how to do MVC or have to do routing in another server-side technology. So Upward allows you to not have to write an Express server. So this alternate universe, Carlos, that does not know how to do that and just knows CSS and JavaScript for the front end, now you can just download an Upward server, run it on your local machine, and then you can have a PWA served on your local machine. And then you can adjust how that works just by tweaking the Upward file and then writing your own front-end code, and then you can deploy it on a generic Upward server in some cloud anywhere, and it'll work exactly the same.
Okay, I think if I share the friction that I had with Upwork, where I have to go the path that I know, which is Express, it's going to be around the documentation, right? Because I sort of understood, it seems simple. You import your Upwork library, you create a server, you include the Upwork manifest file, and it runs. I had a hard time finding documentation of how I write my own Upwork file.
Okay.
How do I create my routes? I think that's when I got lost. And of course, if you look for the alternative, you're going to end up with Express, which is highly documented and all that.
Yeah, very well documented.
But I think if somebody like me, who I just joined Magento, so I'm not very familiar with Magento as a platform, I'm just learning it. I'm a front-end dev. I solve my problems with front-end technology and JavaScript and all that good stuff. If I were to have a Upwork documentation of how I add a new route or a new engine to render and how I build that configuration, I think that would have saved me a couple of days of digging around, and it would have made it more clear for me. And I know that's something that the team is working on, and you mentioned it. You're trying to document it and communicate it better. And I would say that quickly hello world of Upwork of itself, very minimalistic, with a documentation of how to add each element to that file would be very helpful.
Yeah, we actually have a PR in review right now, Carlos, on how I built that. It actually goes through the steps, and it talks about the different resolvers that are being used, and it actually builds that upward file in the tutorial to give you a sense of how to do it on your own.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's in review. It should be published shortly after it passes.
Okay.
I can send you a link too if you want to review it.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Yes, we've been thinking of what you're describing in terms of, we're using the term recipes for that, or at least I am, but you articulated it very well and very persuasively for the audience. So thank you for that very much. Now,
so really quick, Jordan did say something that kind of like clicked for me a little bit. Like he called this almost like it's like a web server interface, which I think is exactly right. Like when I was going through the process of writing the PHP implementation of this, I was thinking like, well, why don't I just write like an htaccess file and Apache will just know how to serve all these different routes and handle all the different things that PWA needs. I was like, oh wait, well then I'd have to write an Nginx file. And then if there are any other backends, then I'd have to write web server configurations for every different backend I had. So this is where Upward fits in. It's kind of like a web server agnostic definition file. And then with each implementation, it doesn't matter what your backing web server is. So that's kind of like exactly it. It's like a web server interface for configuration.
that is so right on. Thank you, Tanya. One thing I've tried to de-emphasize because I'm talking more to front-end developers is all of the back-end optimization work that I think Upward enables. But I should include that in terms of reminding front-end developers of all of the tweaks that you've had to do for various systems that you've worked on. So if you've built something on an Apache server, you have to go into htaccess, make sure the rewrite engine is on. You have to go into nginx.conf, do whatever happens in there. If you're on Internet Information Services, then you have to open a Windows control panel and click a lot of icons. So this replaces all of those things, as long as you have a local server which runs this generic system. What we need to do, I think, is besides providing those recipes, I think we need to provide quick ways to just download that server. Right now, it's kind of hooked into PWA Studio as a convenient little server file, server file of the stage Venia script. But I think we need maybe to have a PHP thing you can install that runs such a server, or a Node thing you can install that runs such a server, or a simple Docker container. I think that would be very good to do.
All right. So, is there time for one more question?
Yeah. Yes.
So just to have wrap my head around it. Let's say I want to create a custom route. Let's say I want to create a route to Jordan. Normally in Magento, you would go into the backend and create your custom route by code.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I want to create one right now. Do I just edit it to the upward file, or do I still need to create a module that builds that route for me in the Magento server-side code?
You don't need to do the Magento module part, because Upward should never attempt to contact, as a best practice, your PWA should not try to get Magento to render a page, since it doesn't know how to render the application shell and everything else. Upward doesn't have a first-class concept of routing, because to me, routing is a very simple application of switch case. And what Upward does have is a conditional resolver, and so you'll see that in the top of the Venia Upward file. That's a perfect example of a recipe, is that we'd have to show, hey, you probably want to do routing. So the way you do it is you make a conditional resolver, and then you match patterns against the URL and fall through.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And
So
create
this has been
account, I
tremendous.
think, is an example of that. In the config file, create account is kind of a custom route that we defined that's just in that conditional resolver and kind of falls through. And if nothing is found, then it kind of falls back on like the Magento path of resolving.
Yep.
Guys, thank you very much. This was very useful to me, and it's going to help us write the documentation that people need.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, thank you, everybody. Well, I think we're a little bit beyond time. I know we generally plan 45 minutes or so for this, and so we can cover help wanted later. But I will say just really a call out to everyone. You're going to see a lot more help wanted and good first issue tags, especially as a result of some of the upward work we just talked about. Certainly some of the enablement on the 231 side, and you're already starting to see some activity pick up from some early contributions. I know the filtering one from Adrian is pretty close, and there's a couple other ones that have been there that we've been waiting for this release to be a big part of it. And so thank you to everyone as part of this. By all means, let us know if you have any questions. You know where to reach us. But again, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and your evening, and we'll talk next week.
Yes. See ya.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yep. See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.